My friends and I have this annual ritual. Every year we get together and stay in a cabin up north. My friend Jake owns the cabin. Well, technically it's his father's, but he lets us use it for a small fee. The cabin itself is incredibly nice, both inside and outside. Apart from having a mostly wooden exterior, and it being isolated up in the mountains, you might mistake it for a lavish vacation spot. It was that time of year and we all got together once again. Over the past years, it's just been me, Jake, and our two other friends, Chris and Mike. We started doing this yearly thing about 5 years ago, when we all graduated from high school. We were worried that we'd all lose touch, what with our daily lives and all, and wouldn't see each other anymore. So we all agreed to meet up once a year and spend a weekend together. The first year was a bit rocky. Mike couldn't make it due to being extremely overworked without being able to get any time off. So it was just Jake, Chris, and I. We didn't do much. Mostly just watched movies and played some video games, and ate all the junk food we had brought with us. Then we left. The following year was much better. This time we all got time off from work and met up on the mountain. We almost broke our necks pulling an SUI, as we called it, sledding while intoxicated. We still played video games for most of the weekend, but before we left, Mike had felt bad about the previous year, so he brought a truckload of fireworks with him. We spent our last night there blowing up snow hills and filling the night sky with an incredible array of colors. The next year, we threw a large party up on the mountain. We had invited coworkers, old friends, and it was the first year I had brought Nikki with me. We had just started dating, and since we were inviting pretty much everyone we knew, I figured, what the hell? Everyone had a great time, or so they told me. I was too preoccupied with my new girlfriend to pay any mind to much else. There was a lot of drinking, a lot of party games, and a broken ornate wooden deer carving that we had to pay Jake's dad back for. But overall, it was a great time. Last year, we decided to limit the amount of people. We could only bring one additional person with us, just to keep the alcohol intake and damages to a minimum. Jake, Mike, and I all each brought our girlfriends. Chris, on the other hand, came solo. Anyways, we spent that weekend watching old horror movies, playing board games, and taking hikes through the snowy wilderness. Overall, it was a pretty leisurely time. Last week, however, was anything but leisurely. While Nikki and I were making our way up to the mountain, we had received a warning that a massive blizzard was heading our way. She gave me a nervous glance, but it had snowed up there lots of times before, and I told her not to worry about it. We had just arrived when the snowfall began to pick up. We grabbed our things and quickly dashed inside. We found Mike and Chris setting up a video game, and Jake in the kitchen putting away the food he had brought. I greeted them, then inquired to where their better halves were. They all said, almost in comical fashion, "Working." I laughed at the coincidence and took my jacket off. I asked Jake if he had seen the weather. He nodded, mentioning we'll probably get a few feet of snow, but nothing major. We quickly settled in. After a few hours of watching Chris stomp Mike in Street Fighter, we all decided to watch some movies. Jake had brought with him his famous collection of horror movies, which I wasn't particularly fond of, but I was outvoted. While they put on the first movie, I stared out of the window, watching the endless snowfall outside. The sky was already darkened from the clouds overhead, but was now becoming much darker as the sun started going down. Something caught my eye through the flurry of snow. I wasn't sure, but I thought I saw someone standing out there. I blinked my eyes, and whatever it was, wasn't there anymore. Thinking it was just the snow playing tricks on me, I rejoined everyone in front of the TV. About an hour into the film, Nikki had to use the bathroom. A few moments later, we were all alerted to her screaming. The others gave each other confused glances as I sprinted to the bathroom. I found Nikki standing outside of the bathroom door. I asked her what was wrong, and she just pointed to the window. She said that she saw something staring at her through the glass. Being the good boyfriend that I am, I puffed up my chest and walked over to the window, looking closely through it, though all I could see was a thick layer of snow falling from the sky. By that point, our friends had joined us, and she told them what she saw. They all thought the movie had just gotten to her, but I couldn't help but think back to when I thought I saw something standing outside. We decided to call it a night, and each retired to our respective rooms. Throughout the night, Nikki just kept glancing out of the window. I told her to relax. If it was somebody, there was 5 of us and only one of them. This helped to calm her down a bit. A couple hours after we fell asleep, I was awoken to a tapping coming from the window. I cracked my eyes open slightly. On the other side of the glass was a face. It didn't look human. Its head was as white as the snow falling all around it, which contrasted the darkness outside. Its eyes were white and vacant, almost as if it were blind. A long, clawed hand tapped a pointed finger on the glass. At first glance, it seemed like it was trying to get our attention, but the way it tilted its head as it tapped made it seem like it had never touched glass before. After a few minutes of watching it, it slowly stepped backwards away from the window and faded from view. I immediately shook Nikki awake and told her what I saw. I could see the panic in her eyes slowly start to build as I described it. She told me that was exactly what she had seen in the bathroom. We quickly got up and woke the others, explaining what I saw. They were all skeptical, but I told them that we needed to leave, now. While the others were packing their things, I walked over to the door and opened it, though what I saw on the other side stopped me in my tracks. There was a pile of snow about halfway up the door. I looked over the mound of snow and saw that our trucks had mostly been buried by the blizzard. I struggled to shut the door, but when I did, something happened that made us all stop what we were doing. There was a knock on the door. We all looked at each other silently, unsure of what to do. I locked the door quickly and told Chris to lock the back door. He nodded and ran off. We all stayed together in the living room, keeping our eyes fixed on the doors and windows. Nikki pulled out her cell phone, but with the bad weather and remote location, that was just wishful thinking. Mike shouted in fear, and we all looked in the direction he was staring at. It was the window right next to the back door. That same ghostly white face was on the other side, partially obscured by the snow. It tapped on the window, then began to pound on it. The glass began fracturing all over. Thinking quickly, I led everyone upstairs to the master bedroom. We all poured inside and locked the door behind us. I could hear the glass shatter shortly after. We all held our breaths as we waited. A few minutes later, the sound of rummaging could be heard below us. Then, everything went quiet. We looked to one another, not sure if we should check to see if it was gone or not. Jake stood up and walked over to the door. But just as he went to reach for the lock, a faint tapping was heard on the other side. We all sat there motionless, hoping that whatever it was would get bored and just leave us alone. Hours passed by while we waited, and not a sound was heard. I got up and walked over to the door. I pressed my ear to the wood and I could hear a very soft breathing on the other side. I'm not sure why, but this out of everything scared me the most. That this creature had been standing there, waiting for hours, without making a single noise. Eventually the sun began rising and the blizzard had finally died down. Chris, Jake, Mike, and I decided we'd try to make a mad dash to our trucks. We were going to force the door open and charge at whatever that thing was. Nikki, of course, advised against it, but we didn't have much of a choice. I counted to 3 and pulled the door open. But when I did, the creature was gone. We slowly crept downstairs and found all of our stuff was trashed. Our bags were torn open. The refrigerator door was practically torn from the hinges, and all the food had been strewn about the cabin. We spent the morning shoveling our trucks out enough to drive out of there, and we all left shortly after that. We all have no idea what that thing was, or what it actually wanted. But we've all decided to postpone next year's trip to the cabin. If it's snowing outside at night, and you hear a tap on your window, get up and find somewhere safe. We all were very lucky, but if we hadn't been on the second floor with the door locked, I probably wouldn't be writing this right now.